Hey there, this is Malorian, and this is going to be a hangout between myself and Anthony from the Sustainable Center. He is looking to get back into War Machine, maybe for the third time, and one of the things that's drawing him in are these Army in a Box deals, which are an amazing deal. So he was wondering if we could go and talk about them and the units and what ones are good, which ones are bad, what are the different interactions you can have. So I'm just going to go and start jumping into the Cygnar one here. Now, the caster you get with this is Seeds Brisbane, and he's a great caster. He's a caster where if you go to a lot of the big tournaments, at least in the States, he's always up there as one of the main casters. He has a lot of answers to a lot of different casters, so him alone being here, as opposed to Nemo or some other caster, that's a really good start. Now, did you already have any thoughts?
So with Siege, and again, I'm coming from over 2 years ago and not that much experience. I always remember that he was more of the shooting kind of caster. You know, he supported more of a gun-toting kind of army, and I noticed his feat is, it halves the armor of the target when you shoot it for one round. So it looks like he's a really good anti-armor caster. But when I looked at his profile and his basic stuff, nothing in his spells really caught me as amazing. His weaponry and his armor didn't count me as amazing. So what makes him so great, like you're saying he is?
Sure. I mean, the first thing is what you said there is where within his control area, the first time an enemy model is damaged, they have half the armor. So you just crack through that armor like nothing, and you can do really massive damage. Now, you don't have to go all shooting. I mean, of course, shooting means that you can pick out whatever you want within that control range, but of course, any melee you have will be just as devastating as well. Now, some of the spells that he has, which are really nice, is he has Foxhole. So one of the hardest things to do in War Machine is keep your caster alive, and if you can just say wherever you want, I want cover right here, you got that foxhole you can hide inside, and that's awesome. Foxhole also lets you, what it does is it acts like a trench, so those models also don't block line of sight. So you can actually use your foxhole offensively, put that, let's say that they're hiding behind a colossal. You put that on their colossal, all of a sudden you can see through the colossal, shoot his rocket launcher right through, and bam, kill the caster. So that one alone can be really good. When we're talking about the rocket launcher, like he has a great gun that he has, that he can also do ground and pound. So you don't need to have any line of sight for that whatsoever. You just place that big template and you just start hitting all those models. So he's also really good against just troop swarms for that type of a thing. Another thing he has going for him is he has his mage sight. So if you're ever up against something that's hiding behind clouds, or if it has stealth, you just put that mage sight right there on them. You just place it, and then boom, everything in your battle group can just shoot them as if that stuff wasn't there. So very, very great spell to have. And those are really his real money makers. I mean, he also has what is it called? Thunderhammer? No, it's not Thunderhammer, but it's like there's one where it slams a model, and so basically if you hit a target, it gets slammed. So that can do two things. One, if you have a heavy coming at you and you can't really deal with it yet, you just slam it away. Secondly, if you're trying to kill something with high defense, you just slam something through them, and it'll be really easy to kill them after that.
So is he more of a frontline caster, or is he kind of like floating behind the troops?
He's more midline. With that foxhole, he can be pretty much right there, right beside your storm wall, rather than behind it type thing to kind of give a reference. And he's just kind of more of a support caster in a way that's also doing work himself.
Okay.
I mean, another thing he has is explosive. So what that does is for one focus, you make it so that somebody's gun has an AoE, so again, anti-infantry, and it's also magical. So if you're ever up against, Menoth, where they're saying, hey, no shooting unless it's magical, oh, that's no problem. You got magical, and it's a great toolbox to have.
Okay. So in terms of the army box that he comes with here, what is your thoughts on, is this a good synergistic 35-point army for him? The storm infantry kind of look a little out of place when I look at the box just from a beginner's perspective. The rest of it, though, looks like it's on par. So I don't know if you want to walk through it and talk about, the pros and the cons of the units that they selected to put in there, and
sure.
Would those be your choices if you were building it from scratch?
So the first kit here is the Defender, and one of the things to remember that it's just not the Defender. That thing could either be an Ironclad, a Defender, or a Cyclone. Now, out of those, you probably want it to be a Defender. It's a really long, strong shot type thing that comes from them. And again, you just pop that feat, and that Defender's just going to rip into something. That's more important to remember with this second kit, because the Avenger is a kind of okay Jack where it has this AoE knockdown, but from that kit, what you're probably want to build from there is a Centurion. The Centurion has very high armor, it has good POW, and really while you're shooting up, you want something there to be blocking to make sure you have the most time to shoot while you're doing that. So both those Jacks can work very well with him. The solo you get with him, the Squire, that's perfect because his feet has to go out far enough to catch the enemy models. And the Squire has an ability where it makes your Warcaster's control area 2 inches more. So it's just that much more that you're catching. 3 times a game you can pull a focus off the Squire. So, I mean, every caster in Cygnar loves the Squire. So that's another great model to have. Now, talking about the heavies just before I move on, later on you might have the argument that you'd want to drop them to get a storm wall, but on their own, that's not a bad thing to have either, right? You're probably, if you're planning to be a long-time Cygnar player, you're going to want to have a defender and you're going to want to have a Centurion. So those aren't bad things to have. Next thing up is the gun mages, and gun mages are usually voted as Cygnar's best unit. They have lots of options where, first of all, their shooting is magical. When you have the unit attachment, all of a sudden they ignore stealth, they ignore concealment. They can either choose to be getting sniped, so an extra 4 inches. They can do their thunderbolt so that they can be pushing things away if things are getting too close. You can also go for crit brutal, so if you get your doubles, you get an extra dice of damage. And then they can also basically do an order that lets them combine shoot as well to get a big strong shot if you're trying to shoot something that's a heavy or something. But the biggest thing is normally they have just little POW 10 guns. With Siege, you pop that feat, and those POW 10 guns are ripping things apart. Because where something could be amazing and be armor, let's say 18, well, all of a sudden they're armor 9, and you're a dice +1, right? So you're just killing these things. Next is probably the one that you're talking about that's the most maligned of all the units, and that's the Storm Guard. Now, the Storm Guard on their own aren't exactly bad. Why everybody doesn't like Storm Guard is the defensive stats. They're only defense 12, and they only have armor 15, which is not really good enough to stop a lot of shots coming in. However, going on the attack, they can do a lot of damage. They are MAT 7, so they're very good at hitting. Their POW 12s are usually punch armor, especially on the feet. And then they also have Electra Leap. So what can happen is that if this is on Siege's feet turn, these 10 guys could easily kill 20 models on the other side. So it's definitely nothing that's like straight out just bad. Another thing is if you're up against something with high defense, something that's defense 17 or something insane, all you do is walk up your Centurion to it and start poking at your Storm Guard, and then all those Electra Leaps will start going there and killing those high defense models. So there are interactions you can use them with, but I mean, to be honest, if you were in the future looking to see what unit would I want to drop out of all these, they'd probably be the first one to go.
What would you replace them with?
Probably more shooting. You know, be it, I mean, they're 9 points, so for 1 point more, you could be getting either your Nis Hunters, or you could be getting your Blazers. You could always be getting more Gun Mages. I mean, the Black 13th is always an amazing unit to get. They're only 4 points, so I mean, you could get them and some other 5 point Rangers. There you go. You drop them. They're 9 points, and then you get your Black 13th, which is a character unit, which is amazing. And then as well, you get Rangers, which run up and mark targets. And what mark target means is that if there's ever an enemy within 5 inches of a Ranger, all other models get +2 to shoot it with range attacks.
Is that automatic, or do you have to mark it?
It's automatic. You know, what most people even do is the Rangers are 6 models. So you have 5 of them stay back and, you know, do whatever, hang out. And then one model could just run up 14 and mark whatever they want. You don't even need to be in command to do that.
So you just throw one up a turn if you need to just mark
Absolutely.
Stuff.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Last one here, that's the solo here, the Journeyman Warcaster, and he's great. He's the one that's going to have the spell that says +3 armor. In fact, if you were to be running what you have here, you'd probably have your Journeyman Warcaster running the Centurion, and then of course, if you have that high armor, and then he has Arcane Shield to make it +3, that Centurion is really hard to deal with.
Yeah, he goes up to armor 22 then.
Yeah.
So this box set is pretty much a 35-point list, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So are the tournaments more 35 points or are they at 50 points? Because I've heard and seen both levels.
Yeah, I mean, really, those are the two standard size for tournaments, are either 35 or 50. The way that I normally try to relate to fantasy players is that the 35 point is kind of more of the 2,000 for fantasy, whereas the 50 is the more closer to 3,000. And currently, 50 points is the norm. So if you ever go to some big tournaments or anything like that, it's going to be 50 points. But I mean, local tournaments could very easily be 35.
Okay. So if we did that one swap where we took out the Storm Infantry and we put the Black 13th in and the Rangers in, that'll put us around the 35-point mark. How would you flush this out? Because I know I've heard you say in previous videos that you kind of go Jack light on the War Machine side, where it's on the Horde side you go more Beast heavy. So would there be even more infantry you would put in here? I mean, because you've got only 2 Jacks and you have a Journeyman in here. So do you have enough focus to run a third one? Would you run a third one, or would you throw even more bodies on the board?
I would not be adding another Jack here. For those 15 points, I mean, what I had said before when I was trying to work out what the 15 points would be included the Black 13th, so that's throwing me off. But the first thing you want to do is a 1-point solo. His name is Reinhold, and basically he just lets your Warcaster shoot in extra time, which is amazing for Siege, and his great gun and his feet and all that stuff. So that's 1 point. Past that, you can put 10 points into either a Nis Hunter unit or a Blazers unit. The Nis Hunters are a mercenary unit that's fast. They got their long-range bows, really high defense. They can combine range. The Blazers are fast cav, and they rip around. They're basically gun mages that are mounted, and they just rip things up.
And is that a Cygnar unit, the Blazers?
Yeah, that's a Cygnar unit.
Okay.
So that will leave you with 4 points after that. And what you could be doing is, I mean, you can either get starting to the solos. I mean, some people might like for 4 points to take Ayana and Holt. Holt adds 2 more good shots to your list. Ayana gives you more magical attacks, and you can harm things so that whenever you shoot a unit, you're +2 to damage. You could also go for some other shooty type things, like maybe take Harlan Versh. He's a 2-point model that can shoot up to 4 times. You could also do 2 points to be adding in Gorman. You know, Gorman's always a great model for black oiling things and putting out clouds. So
basically, everyone in Siege's army has a gun, and their function is really to shoot.
I mean, typically, I mean, it's one of those things where Cygnar loves to shoot. I mean, in War Machine, Cygnar is the shooty faction, but like anything, if you're a strict gun line, you better hope you can shoot everything as it comes in, or you need something in the front. And whether that Centurion will be enough, and whether you'll want another unit in there just to bog things down, that's going to kind of be up to your play style and what you're facing.
Right. So I know the other sneaky thing is that you need 2 lists when you go to tournaments, from what I understand. You know, you need to have the dual caster focus, which, you know, on one side this is a great deal for an army set, but at the other side, you know, I kind of have to have the yin and the yang. I have to have a whole second faction. So what's, you know, this kind of list for Siege, what's its big weakness, and what would you take as, you know, your opposite caster with your opposite faction, so when you do the dual list thing, you have another option?
So really, when you're looking at Siege, his game is all about making sure you get that alpha with shooting, popping that feat, killing all the big tough things, and really normally around shooting. So first of all, anything that is good against shooting, be it because it has a stealth across the board, let's say if you're Barnabas, where they can make little pools that you can hide in, or if you're Lucant, this is a convergence caster, they can cast Deceleration, and you have armor buffs. That's another thing. I mean, the way that the math works is that, let's say you're going up against Baldur 2, and Baldur 2 can be popping his feet so that everything has roots of the earth, so +3. If you're running the World Watchers, they can be going to stone form for, I believe, 4 armor above that as well. And so the way that the math works is that you cut their armor in half, and then you add on those bonuses. So his feat's not really doing as much as it usually is. Another one could be, too, like I said, for a gun line, if you're up against something that's just too fast and too many bodies, you're probably just going to be overwhelmed. So what you're going to need to do then is probably go to something that's not based on shooting, that can deal with that higher armor. And like for myself, I always just do a jam list where I'm going to be getting in there, I'm going to do combat, and I'm going to push for a scenario. I basically try and fight fire with fire. But I've seen other people do things where they run him with E. Haley double storm wall. Again, something that's more melee based and stronger that way.
Okay. So that seems pretty interesting. It seems like Cygnar has a lot of flexibility. I come from, I did the Stonewall with Baldur, and that was very, like squat in an objective zone. I don't do much damage, but I sit there and I'm really tough. And then Menoth was just kind of, you can't shoot me, you can't knock me down, you can't, thou shalt not do anything to me.
Yeah.
So definitely it's a nice different change with Cygnar, and I really did like the gun mages. They always gave me a lot of problems when I played against them with their stealth, and then their shooting just gunning down all my infantry was a real pain. But to switch sides on that, the other box set that's really interesting, because I'm not really interested in the Khador side of it all, or the Crix, is the Protectorate side of it. And that's kind of like going back to my roots. If I had a second Bretonnia, that would be, Cygnar, I guess. Menoth. So with that in mind, what's your thoughts on the Protectorate box? Because although it has, Knights Errant in there, which I've used before, and the Reckoner, the rest of it with Severius, I've never touched him before, and I don't really know, too much about what's going on with him. I heard people say, he could really use an arc node, and I kind of agree with that. But what are your thoughts on that box set?
Sure. First of all, talking about the look of it, if you wanted, you could always do a Bretonnian-themed Menoth. We could make that work.
Once they bury my Bretonnians, they'll migrate to a new game in a new world. Maybe in the bubble world. They'll pop out in the bubble world, and they'll be in whatever the hell this planet is.
Yeah, it's easy. But looking at this one, Severius, he's a caster that used to be very popular, but recently other ones have been more in the forefront, but there is definitely nothing wrong with Severius. Whereas I said that Siege was a midline caster, Severius is a backline caster. He wants to be way back there. Normally he runs more jacks because he has a lot of focus. And what you'll usually have then with those jacks is you have the choir singing battle, so +2/+2, and then he does Eye of Menoth, which gives an additional 1. So basically you just take your jacks and add 3 to their mat and rat and their damage and everything, right? And they just destroy everything. That gives you could have a real ranged assassination threat if you're dealing with a few Reckoners, right? When your rat's that high and the Reckoner's power is so high, it doesn't take too many shots before they can just kill a caster. Now, you did mention the Arc Node possibility, and he does have Ashes to Ashes, which is a good infantry killing spell, but a lot of times he is spending his focus to be upkeeping Eye of Menoth. He also has Defender's Ward, which is +2 defense and +2 armor. So that's usually going to be on the errants. He'll be upkeeping that one. He'll be then, so that's 2 out of his 8, I believe he has. And then, if you give 3 to 2 other jacks, that's all your focus already. So he doesn't normally have the room, the focus to be doing Ashes to Ashes anyway. So it might not be something you need. Now, looking what he does have a Reckoner already, and so that's great and amazing to be starting with. Again, these are going to be the kits, so all the ones you can make with the kit there that normally makes the Reckoner, you can make those too. The Reckoner is the most popular out of all of them, but hey, all it takes is some little magnet work, and all of a sudden you have 3 jacks for each of these. The Vanquisher is alright. He does a kind of long-range, larger blast, and where this really comes in nice, because normally the Vanquisher isn't seen that much, because sure, the blast is okay, but normally the Reckoner's better for the big shot. Blast damage doesn't usually hurt that much, but again, the way that the math works is that if you're doing blast damage to infantry, you half the POW, and you'll be adding 3 between battle and Eye of Menoth. So that blast damage is actually very, very potent. So the Vanquisher can do very well with Severius. Then you have the Redeemer. Now the Redeemer, I'm going to have to cheat and quickly go and see which jack that is.
Yeah, I was kind of concerned about the Redeemer because he has a nice missile weapon, but he's -4 to hit with it. So
that guy. Okay, yep, there we go. So again, he's a model that's not that bad. You normally see him very often with Krios. Krios just knocks everything down, and then you're hitting pretty much automatically. The +3 rat, basically between the Hymn of Battle and Eye of Menoth, pretty much undoes that negative. But a lot of times what you're using Redeemer to do anyway is you don't care about hitting. You're finding a big clump of infantry and just shooting. And, oh, I missed? Okay, I'll scatter over. And then again, we just talked about the Vanquisher. Your blast damage at +3 is still going to be blowing apart infantry. So the Redeemer can still do very well with Severius there.
So can the Redeemer and Vanquisher make any other kits? Because I know when I played them, they were just making one kit.
Yeah, they both make multiple kits. I do know the Reckoner can make the Sanctifier and the Templar, but the Vanquisher, I can't remember offhand which ones that makes. I'm sure it makes the Crusader, it would make the Vanquisher, and then I don't know what other one it makes.
Okay.
Next comes up the Hierophant. He's just really a nice little 2-point model that's kind of like the Squire. He doesn't give the extra range, but he does make it so that when you cast a spell, you get to do it for 1 cheaper. So it's a little bit of focus efficiency there. The Choir of Menoth, that's one we already talked about. You'll really want to have the Choir. Past this, you have your Exemplar Errants, and then also the Seneschal. Errants are amazing, especially with the Defender's Ward on them. You're probably going to want to pick up the unit attachment for them as well. And that might be, I mean, right here you come with the Seneschal, and the Seneschal is kind of interesting where if you kill him, he stays there, and if you kill errants around him, he basically gets wounds back and gets back up. So you can catch somebody off guard with that, but normally against more veteran players, they'll know to shoot the errants first, then kill the Seneschal. So I don't really like that model as much. Then there's also the Vassal of Menoth. The Vassal is great. Basically, he's another 2-point solo that either can do a magical shot or he can make it so that one of your jacks can shoot again. So all of a sudden your Reckoner shoots, and then Vassal comes up and it shoots again. Plus he can give Enliven. And what Enliven does is you put that in your jack, and the first time you take damage, you get to move away. So if a heavy commits to try and take you out, you just move away outside of melee range, and then you're completely safe. So Vassals are amazing. A lot of armies, you'll see 2 of those.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised they only put 1 in the box, but I guess they didn't want to spam choices either. So.
Yeah. Next one you see there is Rupert Corvolo. He normally has 2 different things he does. He either gives Pathfinder or he gives Tough. Those are usually the 2 main things he gives. Now, if you take the unit attachment for the errants, I believe they get Pathfinder from that anyway, but either way, you're probably going to want to put Tough on them. And then all of a sudden, these guys with Defender's Ward, the +2 defense and +2 armor, they get to self-sacrifice to each other. I mean, you probably know them well from the last time you played, right?
Yeah, they're in every list. I don't see many Menoth players not taking their full unit. So. Yeah.
And then from what I see, that's then it for the box.
Yeah.
It seems to be a solid box.
So right off the bat there, what kind of changes, again, would you make? We talked about the changes you'd make in the Cygnar box. Is there any big changes you would make here in the Menoth box if you were to build it?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see changing out the Seneschal for the unit attachment. That's something I'd be doing right away. I could easily see dropping the Hierophant to be a second Vassal if you're really going for those jacks. And then you kind of have an option. I mean, either you can take these 3 jacks and kind of have... I mean, right now this is kind of set up as an anti-infantry list, but if you wanted to change it to be a little bit more for assassination, you could change that Vanquisher for a Redeemer. But again, I mean, the way it is right now, this could just be your Crix drop, something that you know is going to have lots of infantry.
Right. And then if you were to expand this out to 50 points, I guess you would add more infantry, because this seems kind of infantry-like, because looking at it from a Menoth perspective, the Vassals are buffs, the Choir's buffs, the Hierophant's a buff, Rupert's a buff. There's not a whole lot of biting units in here. They're very good and they're very buffed, but there's not as many combat units, shooting units, as there are like in the Cygnar box. So,
yeah.
What would you add?
Well, I know one of the things I'd probably add right away would be the Zealots plus their unit attachment. I believe that's 8 points.
They're like, yeah, it's not very much.
Yeah. So that's going to then make it so you have 7 points left. You can't really add too much after that. What do I add for 7 points? I'm trying to force myself to be a Menoth player. It'd probably be getting just into more of the solos. I mean, one of the things you can do is with those 7 points, you could take the Paladin boat. So what the Paladins are great for is that they can forfeit either their movement or their action in order to do things like, I'm immune to all damage that's not magic, right? So what you do with these guys is while you have everything in the back shooting and shooting and shooting, you get these Paladins just to go forward, step in the zone, go into those forms where you can't be damaged, and the opponent's in a tough spot trying to do something.
Right.
Because as well, if you just try running past them, these guys have reach and weapon master, and they'll kick your butt if you try to ignore them. So.
Yeah, Paladins, I remember, were really good. Yeah, they could definitely drop a caster if they got the right, charge off. So.
Yeah, you know what, Vilmont, he's a character Paladin that's going to make the other ones better.
Right. So you said this is a big anti-infantry kind of list because the Errand Shoot, obviously, the Vanquisher is really good, the Redeemer.
Yeah.
What would be, I know you're not a Menoth player, but what would be the other side? What would be that second list I would take to kind of deal with the things that are not infantry heavy?
From my perspective, going with Menoth, I would probably be looking at Krios. Krios is a great caster where, okay, if this one's anti-infantry, you can say for your Krios one, he's going to be your assassination list. So if you're up against something that has a bunch of heavies or something like that, that's where you're going to be dropping Krios, and he's going to be running 2-3 Reckoners. You're going to be having Tyrann de la Revosi in there, so if someone's hiding behind because normally if they're hiding behind their infantry or their jacks, when you pop feet and knock everybody down, you can see through anyway. The only thing you can't knock down are things like Colossals. So Tyrann, that mercenary model I was talking about, can just shoot that Colossal, and all of a sudden you can see through it as well. But I would really be building that to be kind of a hard-hitting assassination list.
Okay. So we've kind of talked about the two boxes. In your opinion, I know you're going to have the Cygnar bias, but try to lean a little bit more to the center. Which box set do you think is better for someone who's starting out new, in terms of army play and just learning the mechanics? I know it's War Machine, so right off the bat it's easier than Hordes, as you've spoken about. But what's kind of the deciding factor here? What am I getting if I go the Cygnar route versus the Menoth route, or vice versa?
Sure. I mean, looking at the Cygnar route, that one has a nice balanced list. I like the way that it's built. Siege is a very forgiving caster who can just put himself in a foxhole and be safe. Whereas we really saw that in this list here, it's really anti-infantry. The Siege list can handle a lot more different lists, so you're not going to really get into those situations where, man, I just can't handle this as often. So, I mean, I almost be worried, too, that if you took a new player and taught them Menoth, it's almost like teaching a new player how to cheat. They're really going to get into those Menoth tricks with the errants and the choir and +3/+3 to all your jacks, and it might actually make it so that they learn slower, where they're not realizing, okay, normally I need to try and knock things down, or I need to try and make all this rat work in order to hit things. It could just be that they get an easy way through. But at the same time, like I said, I think the Siege list handles more lists better. So, I mean, maybe you could have a new player with the Severius list going up into something that's a really strong one, like, let's say, Karchev. Karchev comes out with all of his jacks, and all of a sudden all these little shots and all these AoEs really aren't doing anything anymore. So that could be an issue.
Okay.
So Cygnar.
So the final thing with this is these box sets. We both talked about things that would change in an ideal scenario. They're priced really competitively in terms of like 35% off MSRP. But the one nice thing is this is in GW, so it's a lot easier, I find, to get miniatures online and get them at a discount here. And I can already pretty much find stuff 25, even up to 30% off on a unit by unit basis. So my question is it really worth buying the all-in-one army box set, or is it better to use it as a template, make the changes, and then go out and kind of cherry pick your own units? Because if we want to get it to 50 points, we've already got to buy additional stuff anyway, and then at one point, if we want to swap out all the Stormwall, for example, that's technically a $50 unit that I'm buying that I may not, use right away, or have to, go get another caster and use it in that list to make it more optimal. So do you think it's better to go pick up the All-in-One Army box, or do you think it's better to, cherry pick your stuff off the shelf?
Well, I mean, it's probably really going to determine how you're going to play them. I mean, that's the nice thing with War Machine, where for the most part, you can really use anything. However, that said, the Siege list is a lot closer to the type of models you'd need. If you were just to jump into Masters in the States, right, and you're trying to see what the top players are using, the Siege list is a lot closer to what you see as opposed to the Menoth one here.
Okay.
Now, there's a lot of good units that's in here with the Menoth, but I mean, yeah, I mean, like the Piper's good. Man, I mean, a lot of that stuff is really there, but I mean, Severius, like I said, has kind of fallen out of favor, and I think that's mainly because since Colossals came in, you've been seeing a lot less infantry, and so him being anti-infantry isn't helping as much. As well, his feat makes it so that the opponent doesn't get their focus back, and Hordes has been really at the forefront lately as well. Circle doing very well with Bradigus. You're having... No, it's not. It's getting lost to me. Also, Circle with Epic Morvana. You have Legion doing very well with various casters, and he doesn't really do much against Menoth, or against Hordes, rather.
Yeah, I remember I did run Severius a bit, and I do remember I got frustrated right away because I played a Hordes guy, and I'm like, well, my feat does nothing. So I was kind of playing with an arm tied behind my back because, I feel like so much of the force you take is built around making that feat execution turn, and not having it half the time is kind of frustrating. So,
but then again, I mean, another comparison with the Menoth side is that there's also the 2-player battle starter kit you can get as well. Mm-hmm. So as a fresh model or player who wants to get a lot of stuff for cheap, you could do that. But a lot of stuff that's in that 2-player kit, that's not as popular. I mean, Krios is great, but I mean, you can pick up Krios for cheap anyway. I mean, a lot of people don't like to run Incinerators. Yeah, I mean, the Crusader is okay, but he doesn't really make it into a lot of lists. So definitely what you're seeing from this Army in a box, I'm liking a lot better than what we saw in that 2-player starter box.
Right, and you're getting more models for one particular faction as opposed to getting another faction that you're probably not going to want to jump into and use right away.
Yeah.
So obviously you chose Cygnar.
All about that Cygnar.
All about the blue babies. Yeah, that was really quite interesting in terms of going through the units and talking about them, because on paper it looks like, I look at the Knights Errant, I look at the Reckoner, I look at the Choir, I look at the Vassal, I'm like, those are all things I see in everybody's list, but then, you look at like the Vanquisher and the Missile guy, and you're like, I don't really know. But the only thing that sticks out for me for the Cygnar box, where I'm kind of like square peg and round hole, is that Stormwall infantry, and like you said, it's not bad.
Well, you mean the Storm Guard?
A Storm Guard, but it's not the most optimal, maximum choice for them.
Yeah. I mean, Stormwall is a big colossal. That's a great purchase.
Right. So in terms of a second caster, if we're going to talk more about Cygnar now, because they're using Electroleaf and stuff, do they work really well with a Nemo and a heavy electric list? Because I know we were talking before the video started out, like my number one miniature that just looks really cool for Cygnar is the Thunderhead. Mm-hmm. And I just think I've read a lot that he synergizes really well with Nemo, since Nemo's kind of like the Albert Einstein electric god for Cygnar.
And now we have Nemo too.
Yeah, you have Nemo 3. You have like 3 incarnations of this Albert Einstein character, it seems. So are they one, if a player was to expand and then take Nemo as well as their secondary caster to kind of flush it out more, are they kinds of infantry that he takes, or are they again not the optimal thing that you're seeing with him?
Again, it's one of those things where Nemo lists are usually anti-infantry, and they like to stay back and shoot lightning. And in the end, you need something to stop them from getting to your lines. So whether you want to be running Storm Guard, or whether you want to be taking Boom Howlers, or whatever you want to run, you probably need something there, unless you're just going to go chips in, like, I hope I shoot them down. But, I mean, of course, the Storm Guard with their Electroleaps can do very well with the Nemo 3 feat, because Nemo 3's feat says, hey, all electrical damage gets an extra dice. And, again, you can just go and stab your own guys. And the nice thing, too, is that a lot of times the Electro Leap will go to the closest model, ignoring the attacker, and sometimes you're just hitting other Storm Guard, and it won't hurt them because they're immune to lightning, but you're kind of wasting an Electro Leap if you don't get your placements right. With Nemo 3, you ignore models that are immune to lightning. So you can just throw all your Storm Guard up there, attack whatever you want, and know that Electro Leaps will go straight to the enemy.
So the Storm Guard are kind of like the counter punch, I'm guessing, once the shooting, has run its course and we still haven't killed everything, we throw the Storm Guard forward and they hopefully can finish off what's ever left in hand-to-hand. They're kind of like that last wall, I'm guessing?
Yeah, they also have 2 other abilities that are nice as well. They have ranked attack, which allows your own friendly models to shoot through them, so they can be in the front and they're not blocking line of sight. You're just shooting through those guys. And as well, they got set defense, so that when you're charging them, sure, defense 12 isn't that great, but then they get +2 defense, and they're defense 14, and that's more legit.
Okay. So I'm going to get really greedy here now. How do I run a Thunderhead?
Sure. Thunderhead is usually a lot more popular with either Nemo 1 or, well, it really could be any of the Nemos, but the biggest issue with Thunderhead is unless you're playing with someone who's never faced him before, they fear the hell out of him, and they know they have to keep their space or gum them up or something. So the nice things that Nemo 1 and Nemo 2 give is that Nemo 1 has locomotion, so it can move up an extra 3 inches. It can also be getting 5 focus, so that after it moves up in pulses, it has 5 focus to buy more shots and boosts and all that stuff. Nemo 2, his thing is that he has Energizer, which again, 3 extra inches, and what he does with his feet is everything gets 3 focus. So he can then as well kind of really help it out. He also has some more defensive spells to keep it alive, whereas Nemo 3, you're not going to get any movement shenanigans, but then all those attacks are all getting that extra dice damage.
Right. Okay. So basically, look at Nemo then if I wanted to go that route. Okay.
And again, like I was saying, look at the new Dynamo Jack as well, because he's amazing with Nemo.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the clamp hand with the electric thing sticking out the middle. Yeah, I remember. Okay. Well, that definitely makes sense. So I guess overall, you're pretty happy with the box sets that they came out with.
Yeah.
Army box sets.
I mean, I'm in the point where I didn't need to get anything. I mean, I have all the Cygnar I really need. As far as I don't want to start a new army right now. I have enough armies, so nothing was really tempting me. Maybe if they make a new box for minions or something like that, that'd be a good one to buy. But either way, looking at it from the view as a new player, these all-in-one boxes are amazing, right? If you compare them to GW, like you were saying, where usually GW will give you like 5 cents off, this is a hell of a deal that you're getting. So you definitely want to jump on these things.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that answered all my questions, unless there was anything else you want to touch on.
No, I'm just hoping that this is going to work out for you, right? Where we're talking about where it's hard for you to find the War Machine player. So, I mean, I do see there's a table behind you, so maybe a new place to play is your place right there.
There are players. It's just the nights aren't lining up right now. So we'll have to see. You know, it's one game amongst many. So we'll see what the balance comes out to be. And you know, this is definitely a step in the right direction in terms of being able to get in on the cheap and get a large army and get something that's at least semi-cohesive. If I was to go with the all-in-one army box, but it's definitely putting the bait out there on the hook. So
I mean, worst case scenario, you're going to get your money back because it's such a good deal that if you buy this and a year down the road you're like, I don't want them anymore, you'll get your money back because you got such a good discount on it.
Yeah, that is always another thing too. So.
All right. Well, I didn't see any questions being posted or anything like that. So unless you have any other questions, I think we're good.
I think we're good.
All right. Go Cygnar.
Of course.
Okay. Bye.
See ya.